to talk to you about the politics of this. Did she not think she was going to get that question?
It's important to remember that this is a negotiation.
It's a good photo of.
I have an opportunity to create chaos.
There is always an email. We are so insignificant in this cosmos. Do you want some facts on baguettes? I'm just feeding you the stories. Maybe this is the context.
The Context. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Free speech is meaningless unless you allow people you don't like to say things you don't like.
After winning, like the people were so proud and it was so intense.
Сказав моїй дружині, треба збиратись, треба піднімати дітей. Почалась війна.
I never thought I was going to be a famous movie person.
When big names talk, they talk to the BBC.
Shipping rates rise and companies warn of delays. We take a look at the fallout on businesses from the Suez Canal disruption. And the future of AI. Predictions for how this game-changing technology might change our lives in the year ahead. Hi there, welcome to Asia Business Report with me, Mariko. We start this program in the Suez Canal as companies scramble to avoid shipping disruptions following recent attacks on vessels by the Iran-backed Houthi rebels. About 12% of global trade normally passes through the canal. That's around 17,000 ships a year. But now many companies, including oil giant BP and Danish shipping company Maersk, are rerouting to take the much longer journey around the southern tip of Africa. Appliance company Electrolux is also setting up a task force to find alternative routes, while IKEA is warning of potential product shortages. Ryan Peterson from the supply chain management company Flexport told me more about how the disruption is already impacting businesses.
It's just getting started, but over the weekend and through today, we've had all 10 of the top container shipping lines in the world, representing about 95% capacity, have begun to divert vessels to avoid sailing through the Red Sea and to go around the tip of Africa, as you said. It takes about 25% longer to go that way from Asia to Europe. And, a 25% reduction in the supply of shipping, we're going to see huge delays, obviously, but also big price increases because, it's supply and demand. And if the supply comes down 25%, one thing we've learned the last few years is that a small disruption in supply can lead to a huge swing in price.
Indeed, we're seeing an impact on oil prices as well there. The United States planning to form an international coalition to protect those ships. What's your reaction to that? Is that going to help?
This is, the founding mission of the U.S. Navy was to protect freedom of navigation going back to 1798. So it's sort of on some level going back to the roots of the Navy. But this is a much harder problem than piracy, because these are missiles being fired from within civilian areas in Yemen, and they're terrorists moving around. So it's not a simple thing for a military task force from the Navy to simply stop it. But obviously, we need to have safety of people, civilians in ships that don't deserve to have missiles fired at them. So hopefully the Navy can do something about it.
Let's now turn our attention to Japan, because today's the day Toshiba gets delisted, ending its 74-year stock market history. But generally speaking, the country's stock market is one of the best performers this year. The Nikkei 225, for example, is up almost 30%, partly thanks to the weakness of its currency, the Japanese yen, which of course helps the country's exporters. And of course, its ultra-loose monetary policy plays a key role, and that's aimed at beating decades of falling prices, known as deflation. And after yesterday's decision by the Bank of Japan, people are wondering how much longer they'll keep negative interest rates. Earlier, I spoke to Kei Okamura from investment management firm Neuberger Berman, and I started by asking him whether or not Japan's economy can handle higher rates.
The short answer is yes. Obviously, this is a pivotal moment for the Japanese economy as it tries to exit out of the lost decades. I think what's important that came out of yesterday's meeting by the central bank was that the BOJ governor was intent on taking a very cautious and measured approach to raising rates going forward, which we think makes sense. Our view is that as we look into 2024, we're going to continue to see consumer prices edge up and stabilize. But I think for the time being, the BOJ wants to see more data to see whether consumer prices will sustain itself. And wage hikes, I think, is going to be a very important point about that story.
Let's now talk about the United States and the battle we're seeing in a number of industries between companies and unions demanding better pay for workers. First, it was Hollywood, then the car industry, and now it's airlines. Southwest Airlines has become the latest carrier to reach an agreement for a new contract with its pilots. Michelle Fleury has the details.
While major US carriers, American, Delta and United Airlines, all reached new contract agreements with their pilots' unions, one noticeable holdout was Southwest Airlines, where pilots were demanding higher pay and better work rules. Negotiations have dragged on for more than 3 years, but now a preliminary deal has been struck. Hailing the agreement, which does still need to be approved by rank-and-file members, Captain Casey Murray, president of the Southwest Airlines Pilot Association, said, "We're finally at a place where we think the value of our pilots and their productivity is being realised." Now, if approved, the Southwest Airlines pilot deal is the latest success for America's labour unions. After lengthy strikes, there were, after all, agreements between Hollywood studios, actors and writers, as well as between car makers and the United Auto Workers, with many labour economists predicting yet another big year for organised labour in America in 2024.
Now, artificial intelligence became the most talked about technology theme this year. Businesses across every sector started to explore how AI, or more specifically, generative AI, could drive greater growth as well as efficiency. So will it become an even bigger part of our daily life in the new year? Our technology editor, Zoe Kleiman, has more.
2023 was the year the world woke up to AI. If you cast your mind back to January, millions of us were using ChatGPT for the very first time. And for lots of us, it was the first time we directly interacted with AI and had AI reply to us. Fast forward to the end of the year, and we know that that tech is powerful enough to pass the trainee exam taken by lawyers. There's billions of dollars of investment pouring into this area, and the tech is evolving very rapidly. Sam Altman, who's the founder of OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, says what's coming at us in 2024 will make what we have now look like a quaint relative. We've seen some really impressive advances, particularly in healthcare, where an AI tool was able to come up with a formula for a new antibiotic that beat a deadly hospital superbug. We also saw AI used in an amazing bit of kit that helped a paralysed man to walk again. But really, what's been in the limelight this year has been generative AI. That is AI that makes content like music, text and video and audio, some better than others depending on your taste. And what we've seen with that is it's already massively disruptive. It's affecting jobs, it's affecting education, and more worryingly, we're seeing it spout out misinformation. Its creators call it hallucination, and this is basically when these tools start making stuff up. Half the world is going to be voting in an election somewhere in 2024, and this is part of the reason why the world's regulators are scrambling to come up with legislation and rules to try to harness this powerful tech so that we can maximize the benefits of it to our society and minimize the risks.
With the upcoming holidays, sales of caviar is booming. Traditionally, it used to come from Russia or Iran, but now there is a new player in town. That's China, which is taking a major market share. Anders Edelholm reports and tastes.
As Anton Chekhov said, caviar. I keep on eating it, but I can never get my fill. It all starts with a fish. Sturgeon is one of the oldest families of fish and has been around for more than 200 million years, a kind of living fossil. Its curse is the roe it carries, also known as caviar. But severe overfishing had led to a total ban on the sale of caviar from wild sturgeon.
It's changed since 2008, where there was still wild caviar. Now all caviar is protected by CITES, so it must be farmed. There's no wild caviar left in the world. And the biggest farm in the world is in China.
China now produces a third of the world's caviar, followed by Italy and France. The rest taken up by smaller producers. And China's part of it is growing rapidly. It will produce 20 to 30% more caviar each year. But what about the quality?
You can't ignore it. If we were in Paris now, out of 28 Michelin star chefs, 23 would buy Chinese caviar. It's very consistent. The taste is good.
But now to the most important question. How do you eat it? I decided to consult an expert.
The finest way and the cleanest way to eat it is actually from the back of the hand. And I'm just going to put it here on your hand. And then by sitting this on here, we're warming up the caviar gently. And then also we have the purest tasting, because there's nothing, we're not eating off of a potato or anything like that. We're just having the pure caviar. So then crush it on the roof of the mouth. Salt, quite saline in taste. And there's a tiny little bit of dryness from the walnut. And that's about it. And creamy. This is a brioche, a breakfast brioche. It's filled with scrambled egg, topped with a little bit of creme fraiche, and then completely filled with Ossietra caviar. And it's on our breakfast menu, and we sell a few, quite a few.
Right. Well, that's the way to start the day.
Yes.
Anders Edenholm, BBC News.
He gets paid to taste caviar. What a lucky man. Before we go, the Indian Premier League has smashed its record for its most expensive player with a winning bid of almost $3 million for the Australian Mitchell Starc. I'm sure you'll hear more about it on Sports Day. That is it for the programme, though. Thank you so much for watching.
Bringing you different stories from across the UK.
I was fat for 20 years. I needed something more to break that relationship between overeating and overindulgence.
Liz says she's been overweight for most of her life, and when she started hearing about a weight loss jab that suppresses your appetite, she instantly wanted it.
One of my friends had lost, I think, 11 stone herself using Saxenda, and she'd posted it before and after, and it was just so radical. So I went online, and you can buy it from many pharmacies.
In under a year, she lost 10 stone. And when you hear about the shortage for diabetes patients, Liz, does it make you want to stop using it?
It would personally make me think twice of using it if I thought I was taking it away from a patient with diabetes.
And it's that shortage of Saxenda, also known as GLP-1, that has local GPs worried.
We're still having some difficulty getting the GLP-1 medication for our diabetes patients. There are people who really need it for their health, either with significant obesity or with diabetes. They do have quite significant side effects, so they should really be used only with a proper consultation with a doctor, and not online or from somebody on the internet where it really is dangerous.
For more stories from across the UK, head to the BBC News website.